5 years, and then I left and I've come back and I've been here another 5 years. But it's just it's a calling that I really do enjoy doing CASA very much. And the reason I wanted to do this class is I do have a teenager. I had two teenagers, but one has opted out now. But I do have one left. And I'm beginning to learn that even since the time that I was CASA before, a lot of things have changed with teenagers now. And so I'm hoping to learn something from this to help. Thank you.
Well, we're glad to have you.
Thank you.
Mr. Jim, you're next.
All righty. Well, I started in 2019 in the fall. I still have my first case and I have a second case. The first case hopefully will be resolved this year pretty soon. And the next one hopefully will be resolved this year too, actually, the second one. And I just, I found that I seem to be pretty good at what I'm doing, especially during court. Stephanie gives me virtual pats on the back.
That's good. That's good.
Not the same, but one of these days we'll all get to hug again too.
I'm telling you, one of these days, right? So why was there a particular reason you wanted to join us tonight?
Well, to be very frank, I need the hours.
Well, there you go. That's good. That's a great reason.
I don't have anybody that's going to be fostered. So.
All right. Well, I'm glad you're here. Miss Sandy, you are next.
I have been with CASA, I think, for 16 years now. So this is really, I think, important for the coming 16, 17-year-olds that are going to age out in the system. I have such a case. And I think they need lots of help that they're not getting. So anyway, maybe we'll learn something new.
And Miss Sandy is one of our panelists tonight, so we'll hear lots from her in just a little while. Mr. Richard, you're next.
After I turned 50, time just kind of run together. So I don't know how long I've been doing it. I think 5 years, maybe. And I believe Jamie and I are on our 4th shared case, and this is my 5th case all together. I've had 4 teenagers, one aged out, decided he didn't want to recommit to the cabinet, which I was sad about, but there was circumstances I don't understand, and it is what it is. He still has resources available to him, but not as many as he could have got if he would have went ahead and recommitted to the cabinet. But I couldn't convince him, and nobody else could either. But I'm taking this. I guess I'm a panelist. I'm not taking the course. Okay. All right. I'm glad you're telling me, because like I said, my days are running together. They got me on this new COVID schedule where I work 7 12-hour days in a row, and then I get a few days off, and I work 7 straight 12-hour midnights in a row, and then I get 7 days off. But those 7 midnights are killer. I'm still recovering. I got off them almost a week ago.
Oh my goodness.
Anyways, my brain's a little scrambled. Forgive me. I'll do the best I can. Thank you, everyone.
Well, I'm glad you're with us. I'm so excited that you're one of my panelists. Well, several of you all are Team Jen, and you guys know how I feel about Team Jen. So I won't have to go all about that, but I love all my teammates, and I always am so excited when they agree to be panelists for me. Now I can't really claim Richard as Team Jen now. He jumped to Team Liz. Savannah, you are my newest Team Jen. Are you where you can talk to us?
Yes, I just pulled up.
Okay. So just introduce yourself for us.
I'm Savannah. I'm actually an intern at Child Watch, so I'm there weekly in the office, and I did my CASA training in December. It was November. So I'm very new. I've got my first case, and they are all teenagers, so super exciting.
So Savannah's hoping to learn a lot tonight.
Yes.
Well, we're glad you're joining us. Cher,
Thank
do you
you.
feel like introducing yourself for me?
Yeah, I'm Cher. No, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear
Can
you
you hear
just
me?
fine.
Okay. I have to tap to speak it. Okay, I'm Cher Nall. I started the same time, I think, Jim. So 2019, I guess, in the fall.
Yeah.
This is my first, I've had the same case, first case. I love it. It's an experience. It's something that was a calling that I wanted to do. I'm excited about maybe working with teenagers because I've raised 3. I don't know. It's just something that I was a foster child myself at one time. I don't know. It's just something that it's a calling. It's something I think I'd be good at too with the older kids as well. I have little ones right now. So it's just something I think that I would be good at. So I'm excited to hear about this tonight.
I'm so glad you joined us tonight as well. Miss Debbie, I haven't seen your beautiful face in forever. I'm so excited that you're joining us tonight.
It's me.
So now you can tell us all about you.
Well, I took my CASA training. I was just sitting here thinking, I think it's about 2 years ago, in February, March is when we started. Got my first case shortly after that, which was a 4-year-old. So haven't had any teenagers yet. Case ended in adoption, and not only one adoption, but 3 adoptions at the same time with the foster family. So that was pretty exciting. But I've always worked with like teenagers and older children. So that's why I wanted to sit down on this tonight to hear about the fostering. And I have a very good friend that fosters older kids that I hear a lot of stories from about what goes on in her house. So I think it'll be very interesting to hear about the older fostering process.
Well, awesome. Well, I'm so glad you're joining us. If you all probably noticed, one other person is with us that has not introduced herself, and that is Miss Jill. She is going to be my co-host for the night. So you're going to have both of us. Jill works in our office. So I'm going to let her introduce herself. And then she said she's going to turn her screen off. So we'll let you see her pretty face while you can.
Jen, you're so kind. My name is Jill Neeson, and I'm the education coordinator at Child Watch. Me and my volunteers, we are the ones that go into the schools and teach the body safety on the online safety, and we work in 13 counties. COVID shut us down. Very sad that we haven't been in any schools this year. Hopefully we'll be back in the fall. But that's kind of what I do. I'm turning my camera off because my internet's very unstable. So I will be with you, but you just won't get to see me. So hopefully you guys, I don't freeze with this internet craziness.
Well, it's already kicked me off. So this could be a really fun night between Jill and I both. But we are so glad you guys are joining us. If you don't know a lot about Fostering Futures, it is a program that CASA came up with for our kids 14 to 21. They were not really getting any real help with some of the issues that they all had from DCBS. They got a workbook, I think when you turn 16, you turn it back in when you're 18, and it was really thick and you had to work it all on your own. And so CASA realized there was just a huge hole in our kids being prepared to age out. So that is what we're going to talk about tonight. I don't know if you guys, any of you have been on my previous Fostering Futures training, but I think this is my 5th one, and I do them all completely different. I've never done one the same because if you know me, that's how I roll, right? I like changing everything up and making it different. But one of the biggest problems that I felt with the curriculum, the way it was before, is that it gave you a lot of things you could do, but then it just kind of left you with here's a pile of stuff, and now figure out where you can find resources and figure out how to make it work. So Jill and I have spent a lot of time together planning this and really wanted to make sure that we were letting you leave at the end of the night feeling like there was something that you can add to your toolbox and go and apply immediately. We're also going to make this 3 parts. So tonight is going to be part 1. We're going to have a part 2 in April, and a part 3 will be in September. They are going to be completely standalone. So if the topic is something that you're interested in, or someone else is that didn't actually do this training, they can join us for one of the others. Or like you all, I'm hoping are going to stay and be a part of all 3. We will make sure that you get all your 12 hours from these 3 parts. So that is one, like Mr. Jim said, hey, I'm just here for the hours. So that is a great reason to be here. And I am just so happy you're here with us. So Jill and I are going to kind of tag team back and forth. But if you guys have ever done a training with me before, I hate to hear myself talk the whole time. So I want lots of participation from you all. We are going to have Kimberly Hines is going to join us in just a little while. She is our Child Watch therapist, and she's going to talk to us about the importance of therapy for our teenagers. And then the last hour and a half, we're going to have an awesome panel that are going to be joining us to tell us a little bit about some of their cases and how they've used maybe some of these resources, or maybe they have some more that we haven't even thought of. So without further ado, we'll get started. All right. So we are going to be supporting our youth transitions into adulthood. So the value of Fostering Futures is that it is an advocacy and mentoring program for children between the ages of 14 and 21. And like I said, before Fostering Futures, no one really got addressed until they were like 16, 17, just right before they aged out. So this was hoping that they were going to create an early intervention program. We want to raise awareness of youth's needs and issues, help ease the transition from foster care to adulthood, promote permanent families, improving outcomes for youth in foster care, and to provide some educational stability. So why do we have a need? Because there are more than 17,000 young people that age out of the foster care system each year. Most of them have experienced maltreatment, lived with instability, they are unprepared to live independently, and they do not have a permanent home. Have you guys ran across any of these issues with any of your cases, or just teenagers in general, right? You guys can answer me. We all have, right?
This is shared. I think I have,
Yeah.
I think I have, it's not in my case in general, but I think the mother, I don't know if I can say this, but I think I can, but she was in that situation.
Yes.
And I don't know I don't know how it worked, but she hasn't, she's kind of repeated, I think, in her life, what happened, with her, in other words. Does that make sense to y'all?
Absolutely.
Yes. So to me, I mean, that's kind of a good example to kind of bring up, so that would help, with these kids, because she's not done, I guess, good. It's been hard on her, in other words, because she's fostered out and she's never had a home and she's never had guidance, I guess you could say. She's never had that, so she's kind of repeated with having kids, and now they've been taken, and, that's who my kids are. So it's, I don't know if that's a good example or not, Jen. I'm just,
No, that's a great example. That is why we're
there.
here. Those are the exact reasons why we're here. We hope that we can reach the kids so that later on that they aren't
that this
our
doesn't
next
happen.
case, right? Yes,
Right.
absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
Okay, so reality. This kind of also goes back to a little bit of what Cher said. The reality of the youth who age out. So 1 in 5 experience homelessness. 1 in 4 are involved in the criminal justice system, and 58% graduated high school by the age of 19. So do any of those seem surprising to you? Or is that kind of what you would expect to have seen?
What I would expect. I mean,
Okay.
sad.
Sandy, what do you think about those statistics?
They seem about right. I don't know the 58% that graduated high school. What does that
So
mean?
that's telling us that that just a little over half actually graduate high school before they turn
Mhm.
19, right?
Yeah, okay. Well, I know the case I have. I don't know where it's going, but I know she said that she would like to be like fostered, and it's on the end of her. She'll be 18 pretty soon, because she's afraid of the outside world, because she knows how bad it is and she doesn't know what she'll do or where she'll go.
Yeah.
But she does want to go to college right now, she says, but she does change her mind. So I don't know. It's sad though that there's no place for them. They don't know what to do. They don't know where to go, and they don't know how to live.
Well, they're
So,
not getting any of
I don't
those
know what'll
those
happen
tools,
to
are
them.
they? I mean, that's really one of the
No,
which Sandy's going to explain to you why
they're getting,
she hasn't gotten to make a huge difference in her child's life. But I'm going to save that for later. But that is
Which-
definitely her child is definitely in this statistic for sure.
Which honestly, Jen, this is Cher. I'm sorry to butt in again.
No, you're fine.
If they would do this in high school, we honestly need to do that with every child. I mean, it's not just foster kids and kids aging out. We need to prepare our kids more in any aspect, because
Absolutely.
they don't know how to do it. It's 50 times to 100 times harder for foster kids, but kids that have both parents, or kids that have divorced parents, or kids that have a single mom parent, or whoever, I mean, it's still hard enough for them to even, we need to put it in high school. That needs to be a learning how to be out there on your own and throw them out there, So,
Well, I was gonna save a little bit of this for later, but part two, we
It's
are
on that.
going to be talking about that exactly.
Okay.
What are they learning in high school? What kind of resources are available? And then we're going to have some people from independent living come and tell us what does aging out really look like? What are some of the resources that they have? So tonight is really going to be a light kind of overview, but every one of the next parts are going to kind of take that into more in depth. And our part 3 is going to be involving the criminal justice system, the residential treatment facilities, and catching it early, maybe with a truancy program. So we're going to have lots of different people throughout the course of this program that you guys are going to get to meet, and hopefully are going to be giving us new resources that we don't even know about today. So that is definitely something that we realize all of our children need, not just foster kids, but that's what I love about Fostering Futures. I feel like we have a lot of these skills already. We already have tools inside of us, but maybe we just haven't realized how we can use that, or how we can connect with our teenagers through experiences that we've already had. So those are some of the things we're gonna talk about. I'm gonna let Jill take over now. She's gonna tell us a little bit about the adolescent brain development.
Okay, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
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 Okay, so this slide kind of gives you a snapshot about the adolescent brain, and that it is a very important part of our development. And it's also our second window of opportunity. We always hear about those windows of opportunity in early childhood, which is from the 0 to 3, but we also have a second opportunity between the ages of 9 and 14. So that's those teenage years where lots of things are happening. And I have a podcast clip that I want to share before we talk about the intricate parts of this. So I'm going to share this.
think I have to stop sharing first.
Do you have to stop sharing? Okay.
I do. Hold on 1 second. There you go.
Okay, just give me a thumbs up if you
I'm
can
Tony
hear.
Cox, and this is Tell Me More from NPR News. Michelle Martin is away. We'd like to spend this part of the program talking about the passage from childhood to adulthood and how that may be tougher for one distinct group of young people. Most of the privileges and responsibilities of adulthood are legally granted by the age of 18. That's when you can vote, enlist in the military, move out on your own. But is that the true age of maturity? A growing body of science says no. The critical parts of the brain involved in decision-making are not fully developed until years later at age 25 or so. In a moment, we'll hear about how child advocates are hoping to use this research to change the laws about their foster care. But first, to learn more about adolescent brain development and maturity, we are joined now by neuroscientist Sandra Ament. She is the co-author of the book, Welcome to Your Child's Brain, How the Mind Grows from Conception to College. Sandra, welcome to the program. It's nice to have you.
It's nice to be here.
Is this idea that the brains of 18-year-olds aren't fully developed a matter of settled science?
Yes, the car rental companies got to it first, but neuroscientists have caught up, and brain scans show clearly that the brain is not fully finished developing until about age 25.
To not be too clinical in the spin that we put on this, what parts of the brain are we talking about, and what changes happen between the ages of 18 and, let's say, 25?
So the changes that happen between 18 and 25 are a continuation of the process that starts around puberty. And 18-year-olds are about halfway through that process. Their prefrontal cortex is not yet fully developed. That's the part of the brain that helps you to inhibit impulses and to plan and organize your behavior to reach a goal. And the other part of the brain that is different in adolescence is that the brain's reward system becomes highly active right around the time of puberty and then gradually goes back to an adult level, which it reaches around age 25. And that makes adolescents and young adults more interested in entering uncertain situations to seek out and try to find whether there might be a possibility of gaining something from those situations.
So this is important. Are the physiological changes in the brain in terms of the development of young people as significant and impactful as the cultural changes and environmental changes that they go through vis-a-vis peer pressure, things of that sort?
Well, actually, one of the side effects of these changes in the reward system is that adolescents and young adults become much more sensitive to peer pressure than they were earlier or will be as adults. So, for instance, a 20-year-old is 50% more likely to do something risky if two friends are watching than if he's alone.
Is there a difference between males and females with regard to their brain development, in this, particularly in this age category?
Females' brains develop about, on average, 2 years earlier than male brains. So you're more likely to have a late developing male brain than female.
So when females say they're smarter than guys, it really is true.
Especially around about the age of 15 or so, yes.
What does this mean? In a minute, we're going to be hearing from some advocates who think that the foster care system needs to be changed, in that in some states, when you reach the age of 18, you are booted out of foster care. And their argument is, based on some of the research that you are now citing, that these young people are not really ready for the adult world. What is the impact for someone who lives in a foster care kind of setting as far as their brain development is concerned?
One of the things that deprived childhood causes is problems with prefrontal cortex function. So somebody who has had an unstable home life is more likely to have trouble with the planning and organizing behavior and with inhibiting impulses than somebody who's had a stable life.
Would you say, based on the research that you are now citing, that it would make more sense to have the legal age become 25 instead of 18 or 21 in some cases?
I think it makes sense to have different ages for different functions. Obviously, some 18-year-olds are competent to go out into the world and handle things by themselves, and some of them aren't. It would be nice if we had a little more flexibility to distinguish the two in the legal system.
Final thing is, if these age limits are not adjusted to take into account the effect of that the research has shown, what is the price, if I can put it that way, that society will end up paying down the road? I know that's a pretty large question, but another way of saying it is, how important is it for us to address this and do something about it now?
Many of the costs of adolescence are actually what we think of as the costs of adolescence, the risk of crime and car accidents and all the crazy things that adolescents do are actually more issues with young adults, people in the 18 to 25 age range, largely because they have more opportunities to get into these kinds of trouble because they have less parental supervision than the younger adolescents do.
Sandra Ament is a neuroscientist and the co-author of Welcome to Your Child's Brain, How the Mind Grows from Conception to College. She joined us from Capital Public Radio in Sacramento, California. Sandra, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm Tony Cox, and this is Tell Me More from NPR News. Michelle Martin.
Okay, so let's see if we can get back to our screen. Jen, can you share the
I will,
PowerPoint again?
Absolutely. Yes,
Thank
ma'am.
you. Okay, we're still on that brain picture.
There you go.
Okay, let me see if I can find it. Okay, there we go. Okay, so that just gives a little snippet and just a little bite of, some things that happen during the adolescent brain development and what challenges they face between being a typical teenager and being in the foster care system. We know that our brain, when it starts developing, we've heard of the use it or lose it syndrome. This happens in adolescent brain development, and it's a very important part to understand. So when we understand these things about what happens during this time of development, it can help us to be better CASA volunteers because we are going to understand why children are acting the way they're acting, and we can respond accordingly. So we know that the brain governs things like reasoning, decision-making, judgment, impulse control, and these are the last things to develop in our brain. So think about if you're a typical teenager, and I use that word very loosely because what is typical anymore? We know teens, or we have teens, or if we don't, we've been teens. So we understand the kinds of struggles that, teenagers face. So think about, the social struggles, trying to navigate friends, trying to navigate substance abuse. If you've got some kind of peer pressure to use substances, think about the academics, the pressure that's put on kids. So they have to navigate that just in a typical setting. So take those typical settings and have that in your mind, and then throw some trauma on top of that. Okay, it could be trauma that's been long-term, or it could be trauma that has just occurred. Okay, trauma is still trauma. So when you have the typical teenage struggles and put that trauma on top of it, what is that going to do to our brain development? What kind of struggles is that going to be for these children that are CASA kids? Okay. So if you can think about that in your mind, does anybody have any thoughts of what those images kind of bring to mind? Or do you have any situations where you've seen a child struggle through this time period with different things?
With children, of course.
Right. Okay, so think about when we have this image in our head of the struggles and this trauma, what are you going to do and what are you going to be facing if you're assigned to a case with a child that is experiencing this? Okay, you're going to have to be ready, right? You're going to have to know exactly, what's the backstory, what's happening. We have to know what stage of development that they're in so we can help them and give them the resources to kind of help them navigate that struggle. So how do you think that understanding what is happening in the brain development is important to you as a CASA? And what are some things that you think you can do to help your adolescent kind of get through those tough situations? Does anybody have any situations to share or anything that they've experienced?
I'm just
Well,
thinking in general. It's not about you if a child goes off on you or something like that. You know, it's about what's happened to that child and having an idea of the developmental factors. It can help you to be much more calm.
Absolutely, because if we understand that during that brain development, you know, they're still developing that reasoning and that impulse control, we can step in and provide them stress management tools. We can step in and help them with conflict resolution tools. So understanding what is going on during that developmental time is very critical for you to just help them to be successful and to move forward. Okay. Richard, did you have something to share?
I was just gonna, guess, put my 2 cents in, is that, I've actually been involved in a couple of cases, where the, adolescent child has lashed out in one form or another. And one of the biggest resources that I took a very big advantage of was actually talking with, and sharing with the not sharing, but just talking with the therapist of that child to find out, you know, where they're at and what triggers they may have, so that I didn't accidentally, you know, pull any of those triggers while I was speaking with the child.
Sure, absolutely. And I think you hit it on the nail, and Jim as well. You know, knowledge and information is power. And if we understand, you know, where those kids are coming from, we don't take it personal, and we can step up, and our response can be relevant, and it can be meaningful. And that way we can actually be helping this child instead of hindering them. Okay. You know, teens that are in foster care, the deck is already stacked against them. Okay. We know that research has already showed that, you know, they're less likely to be adopted. They're less likely to establish lasting connections, you know, with relatives or maybe younger siblings. So they already have these things. They're at a disadvantage when they're at that age anyway. Okay. And then they're in foster care, and then they have another, you know, struggle to have to overcome. But the one thing when I was reading the research, it said that there's some good news and evidence supports it. And I'll just kind of read this quote. It says, during a foster child's long road to adulthood, a loving, supportive, lasting relationship with just one person, the CASA volunteers, so that's you guys, just one person can work wonders, not just on the brain, but on the heart and the soul. Okay, I thought that was pretty powerful because that's why we do what we do. You know, we do it for the heart and the soul part, most definitely. Okay, so these next few slides, excuse me, provide some recommendations for the foster care system, because, you know, it's just not enough to talk about it. We got to figure out what to do with it. Okay, we've got this information, so how are we going to apply it, and how is this going to be beneficial for us as CASAs and for the children that we work with? Okay. So the first one is to take a positive youth development approach to all opportunities for young people in foster care. Okay, so we're positive. We're making sure that we're moving in the correct direction, that we make sure that we understand development, and that we promote it and support it on all levels. The second one is we provide interdependent living services that connect young people with family and caring adults. Okay, some of these children may not know how to build relationships. So we need to support them and teach them. Sometimes they need to be taught how to have connections and relationships with others. Okay, and that's, you know, that's an important job as a CASA, is that we step in and we see this firsthand, because we're as close to the kids as probably more so than any of the adults in their life sometimes. The third one is engaging young people in their own planning and decision making. Personally, I think it's about accountability. You know, we support and we promote, but we also make kids accountable for what they do. Okay. You know, you're accountable to go to school. I can't make you go to school. It's on you if you don't, and the consequences are going to be for you to sort out. Okay, so accountability, but we support as they set goals and plan, and we guide them to make good decisions. Okay, also be trauma informed. This promotes healing and emotional security. You know, if we get to the point where we are in foster care, we could have suffered some trauma. So having a CASA volunteer that's trauma informed, you can be sensitive and you can provide the resources and the needs for your kids. And number 5, and the last one, is extend developmentally appropriate foster care to 21. And actually, you know, we heard on the podcast that they're promoting it to 25. And his reasoning made a lot of sense. I mean, I agreed with it 100%. So if we understand and kind of follow these steps, that we can help promote and make a better foster care system, and that we can respond to our children that we work with, and then we can serve them to the best of our ability. Okay, Jen, that's all I have on the brain. Does anybody have any questions?
This
Yeah,
is
I have a question.
okay.
Sure.
This is Lorraine. Whenever they were talking about, you know, different children being different, you know, I really agree with that. The child that I have that just recently opted out after she turned 18, which at first she did agree to stay, but it didn't take about 3 months and she decided not to. But this is a child that she has practically raised herself. I mean, her parents absolutely were no help with her. And she was with her parents except for the last couple years. And I think she was so independent that she couldn't handle the structure, you know, but she was definitely more well, you know, developed in her mind, I think, than the average child was. You know, she never had a childhood at all. She had to become an adult as quick as she could to take care of her sisters and brothers, I mean, and then herself. And she'd made a lot of bad mistakes, but she didn't handle, I don't think she handled the foster parents very well at all, because she just wasn't used to someone being over her. I mean, it's tough. So you have to look at every child different. I mean, for sure. So.
Absolutely. And that is one of the good things about CASA, the program that I know about. I don't know a lot about it. I'm still learning. But, you know, they do approach each child with an individual thought pattern. I mean, what can I do for this child to fit their needs? How can I respond to this child on their level to be both beneficial and relevant and meaningful?
Yeah.
So, yeah, thank you for sharing that story. Because that's really true. Some of our young people are put in situations where they're the parent and they could be only 11, 12, 13, and they're raising a house full of kids. And, you know, some adults can't function on that level. So how do we expect, you know, 11, 12, 13, 14-year-olds to, you know, do adult things? It's a struggle.
I
Okay,
think there's a lot of them out there in this same situation. And I think that's the main thing I want to learn from this is, I mean, we had a lot of talks, but I just feel like there's, you know, if there was something that we knew what to say to these children, you know, and make them take it to heart and understand it, instead of thinking they know the answer and they leave. So anyway, thank you.
Hey, Jen, to me, the key to that is brought up. It said the backstory, knowing the backstory, knowing what that child has gone through and has been through is going to help you know how they need to be helped. Just like this one had, you know, raised her siblings, and she had been the adult. And so it a lot helps to know what that backstory is a lot of times.
Well, it makes me think about your case even,
Yeah.
yeah, you had a
Yeah.
4-year-old, but you had a mom that had been a part of the system that
Yes.
had never had anyone. And here we were trying to protect a 4-year-old from eventually becoming one of these teenagers, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I
Was
have
there
a
someone
que-
else that, okay, I thought I heard somebody else.
Yeah, that was Jim. I had a question about the cultural and ethnic background of kids too, and will you all be dealing with that as well as?
Miss Jill is going to talk about that in just a few minutes.
Righty.
You're just jumping ahead for us, Jim.
Well,
But I know that is definitely something that is really, really big on your heart. So I know you'll have lots of stuff to add in that section. Is there anything else on the brain development before we go on?
I'll just make one quick comment and then we can move on because I think our time is
Evaporating.
going towards where, yes, evaporating very quickly. The only comment, the last comment I wanted to make is, what do you say to the kids? Sometimes there's nothing to say, you just listen, and we just listen, and sometimes they can solve their own problems by just talking it out, but they don't come with a script, unfortunately. And sometimes if we have a script, it's not applicable to that child. So sometimes listening is just our, best tool to take and use.
Absolutely. Well, that sort of brings us right to what we're going to talk about next is the difference between being a mentor and an advocate. So one of you guys tell me what is the difference? Tell me what a mentor is. What are some things that we might do as a mentor?
it says right there.
Okay, well, other than just what says on the screen.
I think a mentor is more of honestly to be more of a friend than anything to the child, to be able to hang out with them, to share with them, be able to try to understand where they're coming from and help, and hang out with them and stuff like that. Whereas an advocate is completely different. I'm not there to be their buddy, but I do try to get some kind of rapport going with them. But my thing is just trying to make sure everything is working for their best interest.
For them.
Okay, so give me some examples. Sandy, tell me what an example of give me something that a mentor would do. An example of something you would do as a mentor.
Did you call me, Sandy?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yes, Sandy.
Well, I lost you there for a minute. Sorry.
You're fine.
You try and be friends with them and talk to them and give them, ask what they need, what they want, and so on. But
Okay.
I don't know. It's hard to know what to say to them. And if you have one that just tells you what you want to hear, that's difficult to deal with, because then she changes the next day. So I don't know. It's just this case has been really difficult. And
Absolutely.
she's had no really example in her life that I know of to help. And she never stays in one place long enough that you can get close to her, or she can get close to anyone in the facility, to develop a relationship. She's moved so many times. So I don't know. She just always talks and agrees with what you say and so on, but it's not real. So you just don't know. I've lost you. You're not talking.
Can you guys hear me? Because Jen is frozen on my screen.
I can hear you.
Yes.
Can you
Yep.
hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
I think
Yes,
we
I can
may,
hear you.
We may have lost Jen. Give me a wave if you're not frozen.
I'm not frozen, but I'm off video. So
Okay.
share.
We've got a couple of our participants frozen. Kimberly, can you hear me? Hi, Kimberly. Okay, hopefully Jen's going to jump back on here. So let's see let's see where she was at.
She's talking about the advocate and mentoring and what the
Okay.
difference was.
All right, let's see if I can pull up the screen. Well,
All I have is 2 white dots.
okay, let's see if I can't find the PowerPoint because she was sharing the PowerPoint and I bet I can share it.
Okay.
Such is life. This is our COVID life.
I know.
Let's see if Jen can hop back on. Okay. Let's kind of see where we're at here. Okay, so I'm going to jump ahead to the cultural part and I'll just talk about the culture until Jen can get back connected with us. Okay, so culture, very important. Okay, culture impacts everything that we do, and it's one of our lenses that we view our whole world. Okay, it's something that we base on our viewpoints of everything that happens around us. And when you think about culture, what are some things that come to mind? When someone says culture, just don't think about it, just pop out a word that comes to mind when you hear that.
Southern culture.
Okay,
I think more of race.
okay. Does anybody else have any words that they connect with the word culture? Okay, so typically we think about race, ethnicity, religion, sexual orientation, nationality. Those are some typical things that enter our mind when we hear that term, but there's other culture considerations such as foster care culture. How about the culture of poverty? There she is. Hi, Miss Jen. I skipped ahead and started talking about culture to kind of save us.
You are great. Thank
Oh.
you.
Okay, well, do you want me to just continue?
Yes, you're fine.
Okay. So let's see, where was that? Okay, culture of poverty, modern youth culture. How about school-based culture? And it can even include military culture. Okay, whoops. So when we're working with anyone, but especially with children and young people, it's important to be culturally competent. Okay, and we hear that word thrown around a lot, but what does that really mean? To be culturally competent. Okay,
Well-
oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, I've been through this a lot with other organizations. And to be culturally competent is kind of it's a misleading word or misleading phrase because I used to think that being competent meant that I knew everything there was to know. And what I have discovered is knowing the questions to ask is much more important, and knowing when to ask questions.
Absolutely, I agree. Because I think our cultural competence, I think it impacts everything we do. It impacts how we respond to those that are different from us, okay? Whether it includes race, gender, socioeconomics, and it covers everything that we kind of just touched on, the foster care system, poverty, the youth culture. But also when we're thinking about cultural competence, another layer is our nonverbal, our body language. Okay, how are we responding? We might be saying the right words, but what does our body look like? How are we responding with our bodies, how we're sitting, our head nods, the way our face looks. I always say I can't change my face, but I really have to be conscious of and control the looks because sometimes everybody can see exactly what I'm thinking just by the look on my face. And we use this a lot even with early childhood, is that, children speak volumes without saying a word. Now, adults working with young people can speak volumes to them and tell them exactly what you think about them and not even use words. It can just be through your body language. So there's so many, the culture is a really big topic. It's, it's something we could probably talk about for 3 hours, but I just wanted to touch on some things that, just some points that maybe don't get discussed as much. So the next one is sometimes that we may be challenging to let go of our opinions and values, and even our belief systems and we may have had this for a very long time, and nobody's asking, you to change your whole belief system or to change the way that you think, but you do need to change how that you use that when you're working with your CASA kids or with any kids actually. So if you're wanting to make a difference and you want to be impactful in somebody's life, you may have to set those beliefs and those values aside and do what's best for the individual that you're serving. So that's just kind of something to think about. So in the role of a CASA volunteer, we must understand that our own biases, and that's kind of hard sometimes to kind of reflect on yourself of what your own biases are. It's important to educate yourself. It's important to develop a self-awareness and to be mindful. So if we keep this in mind, we can avoid, a lot of times we can avoid misunderstandings and hurt feelings just by kind of stepping back and checking ourselves sometimes. Just kind of making sure that you are being sensitive to the people that you're working with and working around. Because once we get hurt feelings and misunderstandings, it's really hard to reset that. It's kind of like those first impressions you can't go back and change. Sometimes when we have those misunderstandings, you almost can't reset that relationship. So it's just something to be aware of. You may even have to advocate for children and help the foster families understand how to appreciate and support and to promote differing culture and backgrounds, because they don't match people. The foster families are not matched with, the same culture foster child. They may be different backgrounds, they may be different races, religions. So we may be dealing with lots of different between the family that they're placed with and the child that goes into that home. So sometimes we have to be sensitive and kind of advocate for the child. This is where your advocacy comes in, to help those foster families understand and how to support and promote and appreciate and respect whatever their background and culture may be. So learn about your child, learn about their families, learn about their cultures and their beliefs and their traditions. And I think this is the way that we can best serve the children that's in our cases.
Could I mention something about that? The intersectionality of culture too, because we can't make assumptions about the certain cultures, even within color or country or county, because there are many MINI cultures, I guess you might say, based on like in the Black or in the white community, there are different religious cultures. Not everybody's a Baptist, even here in Western Kentucky, for example, a simple example.
You're absolutely right. And I think that kind of goes back to, what we've kind of heard and been brought up with is don't judge a book by its cover, because you can't judge someone by just looking at him of what, they believe or what their traditions or culture or their needs are at the time. So very good point. Thank you. Okay,
Yeah,
Jen, that's all I have on. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I sent you a chat, but that's, to me, I guess cultural competence to me means being tolerant. You have to be tolerant. You don't have to agree, but there's several things that I've actually had a case where I had a couple of kids that their dad was, just through and through redneck, as redneck as you can get. Flew the Confederate flag. That's the way he raised the boys, and they were actually placed with a black family. So that was interesting. I had to, I worked that one pretty good. I tried to every time I went there, and I went there more than just a standard one time a month. I went 2, sometimes 3 times a month because they were not in this area. I had to travel over an hour to get to them. And I would talk to them and I would just let them know, look, I know it's different. You know, these guys go to church, they go to almost it wasn't Baptist. I think it was a Pentecostal church. And these kids hadn't even been to church, and they went to church like 3 times a week, and they made the boys go, and they weren't liking that at first, but you know, I just said, look, you're just going to have to open your mind a little bit. I'm not saying you have to convert to whatever religion they're doing, but you know, they're raising you, they're taking very good care of you. You know, you just have to be a little bit tolerant. And, you know, eventually they came around. They didn't like it, but they were also not vocal about it either. So
That's a really good point, because think about if those boys didn't have you as an advocate to help support them and navigate that situation. That would be kind of scary. I think it would be scary for the child and probably scary for the foster parents as well. So that shows how important the
When you think
advocates
about
are.
it, I think every individual almost is a culture. I mean, we all, it's hard for any of us to have the very same one, unless you're raised with your sister or brother and you go down a straight line with each other. Everybody's going to have a culture of their own. So I guess that's why we have so much disagreement going on.
Good
That's
point.
right.
Nobody can agree on anything.
Good observation, Miss
we-
Lorraine. Jen, that was the end
We are
of my culture.
definitely gonna, all right, I was gonna say, we are definitely gonna talk about culture some more when we get to the panel, because I think you guys have all kind of hit on the fact that culture is something that just ingrains every decision we make and how we handle everything. So don't think this discussion is gonna end here, but we have added someone else to our group here. Miss Kimberly Hines is with us, and she is going to just be on for just a little while with us. So I'm going to go ahead and let her talk. She is our therapist at Child Watch, if you have not had the opportunity to meet her. And we always talked about what is our number one recommendation always. And that is always that we want our kids in therapy. And so I just thought it was really important that we talked about, well, why? Why do we always recommend therapy? And how, especially with our teenagers, what are some ways that we can kind of connect with them? And she has an amazing background in teenagers as well. So I'm going to turn it over to her and let her talk to you all about the importance of therapy and just what do we need to know going forward, Kimberly?
Okay. Hi, I'm Kimberly. I think I've talked to most of y'all at some point, or maybe you were there for the CASA presentation I put on, but I have basically worked with this population that we're working, all of us are working with, which is traumatized and abused children, for my entire career. Prior to working at Child Watch, I worked in the foster care system as a therapist. And then prior to that, I was the day counselor at a residential facility for children who had been removed from the home. So lots of different ages, different backgrounds that I've worked with over the years. And I have always said to anyone I meet that absolutely everyone needs to be in therapy. And I always say, I know that sounds biased because I'm a therapist, but honestly, there's so many benefits that we get just from having someone there, someone that we know is going to listen, someone we know that will push us in areas that we need to be pushed, someone that will comfort us in those times that maybe we don't feel strong enough, someone that will lift us up and encourage us. And that's really the goal of a therapist, is to be there. Because we're all navigating our own journey, especially with kids. They like to have control of their life a lot. And so we don't want to just be someone that just tells them what to do all the time. One of the great things about therapy is, I don't have to make sure that they're getting A's, so sometimes they can talk to me about their school trouble and just be completely open and honest with it, because I'm not the parent. I'm not gonna, If they tell me, hey, I'm sleeping or I'm ditching class, they're not going to tell a parent that because that would get them in trouble. But they can talk to the therapist. And because they know that that's not my role, I can get them to let down their guard. It's not my role to punish them, give them consequences. So they'll let down their guard. And then we can actually build that relationship that says, okay, well, what do you think some of the possible outcomes could be of skipping class or getting these low grades? And on the flip side, what's some good consequences of staying in school, of trying your best? And so that's just one of the really beneficial parts of therapy, is that you have someone that, because we have no other role aside from this third neutral party, we can sometimes get into that information that they might not want to share with a parent. And so goes with adults. Sometimes there's something we're really struggling with, but we don't feel like we can share it with friends or family. So absolutely anyone can benefit from therapy. And it's really particularly important for kids because we all need that help during transitions. And children, teens go through a lot of transition, especially with hormones, going into adolescence, that puberty. I mean, we can all think back and remember how rough that was. That was, our voice broke and we broke out with pimples all the time, or someone spread a rumor about us, or someone made fun of us, or, y'all are dealing with kids that are probably experiencing bullying, because most kids at some point have. And we always need that extra bit of help and support during transitions, going from middle school to high school, going from living in a home to transitioning out and being your own adult. It's good to have that extra support. Another thing with therapy that's so important is, we, of course, at Child Watch, we see trauma and we treat trauma, but that's not all our kids struggle with. They don't just struggle with their childhood abuse. They also struggle with low self-esteem. They struggle, sorry. Zeus, stop it. Sorry. Zeus. They also struggle with, poor social skills. We all go through those awkward times where we're learning how to interact with other people. And in therapy, we teach those. We teach them how to resolve conflict, how to communicate with someone, how to have your own voice, and how to do it appropriately, how to be assertive, not arrogant. That's really important, that we help them know what their voice is, but we help them say things in a way they'll actually be heard, because no one listens when you're yelling and screaming. We teach problem-solving skills in therapy, a lot of independent living skills. That's what's really great with some of you that are working with those that are aging out, is in our therapy, we work on engaging those independent living skills, knowing how to do your laundry, taking responsibility for making your appointments. Hold on one second. I am so sorry. Guys. Anyways, so, we work on those independent living skills. It's also a time where during this age, kids are going through mood disorders such as anxiety or depression. And, we're certified to help you learn skills to address that, how to challenge negative thinking, how to recognize maybe the impact your emotions are having on your behaviors, or the impact your thoughts are having on your emotions, and how to change one to change the other. So lots of benefits with that. And what I really think is great is when you have a kid that is in therapy, we're with them through some of those bigger life changes. Because the thing with trauma, because a lot of y'all are dealing with trauma, is that it can pop up out of nowhere. A kid can seem to look okay. By all accounts, they're doing well. They've got good grades. They've got a good social base. Maybe they're even attending church. They're involved in extracurriculars. but behind closed doors, they're cutting, or behind closed doors, they're having anorexia or bulimia. And that's not easily seen until you kind of get in there and you ask the right questions. So with therapy, we can do that. But we also see that we have kids that will be fine, and then they enter that first real relationship, where it's not just that teenage puppy love. They find someone and they get their heart broken, and then all of a sudden all those emotions from younger, maybe experiences with a parent, comes flooding back. They can't trust. They have issues with intimacy. So if we are addressing that while, they're already in therapy and this occurs, we're there to help them work through that. More of a preventative, like we can be teaching them before this happens, what are good social skills? What are the tenets of a healthy relationship? So that maybe we can avoid that explode moment. Because it does pop up. You lose your first job, you can sometimes see that happening. So, the benefit is always to help prepare, give us those skills. We can't know 100% what's going to happen in the future. But one of the things of therapy is to build the skills that you can apply across any situation. Because if you learn how to resolve conflict, you can use that at work, at school, anything. And if you learn how to express yourself, you can use that in any situation. So lots of benefits. And if y'all have questions, I'll definitely answer those in the end. But I want to get to the next thing that I was asked to talk about, which are ways to connect with your teens, because they're not the easiest populations to deal with. A lot of people are intimidated by teens, and I can say for a few years I was too. They're moody. You feel constantly like they've got something to say, and we can feel afraid of them. And kids can sense that. They can sense that we're timid, and that can either cause them to not reach out because maybe they feel you won't understand them, or it can cause them to, manipulate because they see that they have that hold over you. So I think one of the important things is addressing what fears you have with working with teenagers, so that you can be prepared to work through whatever you need to work through before you help them. And then the most important thing with working with teens is that quality time. As in any role in a kid's life, we all have that responsibility that we have. We're either helping them learn something, or we're helping them overcome an obstacle. We're helping them problem solve. And that's great time with teens and children. But we also need to have just that relationship building time where you dig your hands into some Play-Doh, or you get out the paints, or you have a spa day, something that creates that intimacy in the relationship, where it's not all about the responsibility and the helping them understand the consequences. It's just about relationship building. And you will get so much more information from a kid, rich information about how to help them when you have a good relationship and they trust you. And building that trust takes a lot of time. So doing that time together, and then, not forcing it. So sometimes we can tell a kid is dealing with something, and every part of us just wants to say, what's the matter? What happened? But sometimes that causes them to recoil because they don't want the attention, or they don't want you to know something's wrong. So just asking, or I know something's wrong, you got to tell me. That can sometimes get you the opposite effect of what you're looking for. Sometimes it's just sitting back and letting them know that you're there, you built that relationship, and that you're not fishing for answers. You're not trying to solve a problem for them. You're just there. And you'll get that where they just feel like they can talk to you, not necessarily have to come to you to fix it for them, but that they can talk to you and feel comfortable doing it. And quality time helps to build that. And then another big one is listening. Obviously, we know regular listening, we got to hear what they say, but I'm sure y'all have heard of something called reflective listening. That's very, very helpful, where you reflect back what they're saying. They might not put an emotion to what they're saying enough of what they feel that you reflect it back, and it lets them know that you understand, and you're not having to give them some new revelation. You're just putting in a way that they know this person gets me. So they say, well, I went to school today and the teacher was horrible and people made fun of my braces, and you just put it in a simple sentence that says, you know, from what you're telling me, it sounds like you had a really hard day today, that people weren't very nice to you. I bet that made you feel angry or frustrated. You know, rephrasing it to them, they know you heard them that way, and they feel like, okay, I can go on, I can tell more they heard. And another thing is reflecting back that it's okay that they feel that way. They're not going to tell us if they're angry if we're on them like, you know, you really shouldn't be angry, or, oh, you really don't have a reason to be angry. Even if they don't, you know, that's not the way to get them to calm down, telling them you don't have a reason. So I always say, remember, emotions are valid. The reason for the emotion may not be valid, but the emotion is valid. If I feel hurt that a friend ignored me, it could be a simple misunderstanding. My friend's phone was off and they didn't know I was calling. So it's not a valid reason to feel hurt, but I do. I feel hurt. And for someone to come in and say, you shouldn't feel hurt, it wasn't anything, you're just being sensitive. Well, that's going to make me feel worse, because now I feel like, oh, well, you're too sensitive. That's a problem. But if someone comes in and says, you know, I hear that you're saying that, you know, you're hurt today because you felt like you were ignored by a friend. I've been there before. Simple as that. And then they can, okay, this is how I feel. They understand how I feel, and they don't feel the need to convince you, because sometimes that's what happens when you say, oh, well, you have no reason to feel upset. Well, then you launch into, well, I need to convince them why I feel upset or why this emotion is valid. So validate the emotion. You don't have to validate what they say caused it, but you validate the emotion. You're mad. You know what? It's okay to be mad, as long as you express that anger in a way that doesn't hurt you, doesn't hurt anyone else, doesn't hurt the stuff around you. And it's okay. Anger is okay to have. So, you know, just listening, empathizing, reflecting back, and then I would say not shaming, because everyone does something that we're not proud of. And we know it most of the time. So we're dealing with teenagers. They maybe did something dumb. They know it. But try not to shame them. Like, what were you thinking? Like, how could you possibly think that was okay? That automatically shames them, and you put us on, you're on a new level with them. Now it's on the defense. Whereas, you know, you can say, well, do you think that was a good choice? Or did that end the way you wanted it? Something like that. Just more lighthearted. It doesn't mean you excuse whatever they did. There's ultimately going to be a consequence, because anything we do has a consequence. And you don't spare them from consequences or make them think it wasn't okay, but you just don't shame. So bedwetting or whatever, if they break a window, you know, okay, what could we have done better next time? Or, you know, what maybe led to some of these problems, as opposed to, I don't know what you were thinking playing with that baseball in the front yard. So, you know, not coming down too heavy on that, just helping them understand the consequences. So, those are just some quick tip ways that I always think: spending time, listening, reflecting back, empathizing, just understanding. Any questions that I could answer?
Where were you when I was raising my teenagers?
Oh, whew.
You weren't even born yet, probably.
Probably not. I was born in 87.
Yeah.
Yeah. Born in 87. Yeah. And, you know, and I think a very important thing is taking care of yourself. I'm very big on caregiver, adult self-care, because anyone that's involved in a kid's life, you've got to take care of yourself, because it ultimately will affect your relationship with a kid, especially a teen. If you're stressed out, they're stressed out. If you're angry and frantic, they're angry and frantic. So you taking care of yourself and making sure that you're calm and in a good place is automatically going to put your relationship with that teen in a good place. Because then if they test you, which is a hobby of teenagers, it's a pastime, is to test you, but you're relaxed and you're not going to bite. Whereas if you're irritable and you haven't had that rest, or you haven't ate well that day, or you haven't had that, detox time for yourself, or you talk to someone, you're going to snap, you're going to bite, and then no one wins because they've gotten you upset and they're upset. And, to some extent, sometimes teenagers can absolve themselves of their emotions if they get it focused back on you. If you're focused on you being upset, then they don't have to deal with whatever it is they're feeling. So being in that calm, relaxed state means that when they present a problem, you're ready to handle it and not have it come back and affect you, because we're very, what I say, porous people. We can absorb the feelings of other people very easily. So it's so good to be healthy mentally, physically, spiritually yourself before even trying to deal with a difficult audience like a teenager.
Kimberly, I know one thing that our CASAs have struggled with in the past is that while we recommend therapy, or maybe even the judge has court ordered it, you have a teenager that is really not willing to come to therapy, doesn't want to admit they need it. So what are some pointers that maybe we could convince our teenagers that that will be beneficial for them?
Yeah. And that is very common. If you think about what kids are going through, it's identity development at that time, and it's peer building relationships. And sometimes kids have a really hard time going to therapy because in their mind, it means there's something wrong with them, that either they're damaged or they're bad, they carry too much baggage, or incapable of handling it themselves. And so sometimes you just got to get that out and be like, I just want to let you know that that's, you're not damaged goods because you need a therapist. You're not. And the fact is, if you're worried about what people think, the great thing about therapy is it's 100% confidential. No one has to even know that you're going to therapy. And I think another thing teens struggle with is they know the therapist is going to talk with the parent at some point. And I think that makes them feel alarmed. Like, well, I can't talk because anything I say will go back to my parent in that caregiver session. So I think having that conversation with your teens is that this is confidential. What you say in therapy is not passed on back to your parent. So this is your opportunity to say what you want to say, what you feel you need to say, without worrying about any type of consequences or ramifications with your relationship with your parent. Because I think that's a big one. They think that it's just a tattletale session, those kids that are mandated to come. And so setting their mind at ease that it's confidential, it doesn't go back to mom and dad, there's nothing wrong with you that you have to go, and telling them it's okay to not like to try something new. And the therapist knows that. She knows how, or he, whoever, if you're going to a he or she, they know that going into a room with a stranger is not a pleasant thing. It's hard because you don't know the person and you're about to tell your whole life story to them. They already know too. So that's the other thing going on in a teen's mind is, what do they already know about me? And based on what they know about me, what do they think about me? And so just putting their mind at ease that the therapist is creating a space of what we call unconditional positive regard. And what it means is, as a therapist, we accept you. We accept you flaws and all. We accept you even if you do things that we don't agree with. We value and respect you as a person. So no matter what is told to a therapist, it is not going to lead to judgment on the therapist's part. It's not going to lead to shaming from the therapist, lectures from the therapist. It's not, because a therapy session has got to be built on that trust and rapport, and they have to know that that therapist is in. So that unconditional positive regard for that client. So telling them so, just basically dispelling some of the fears that come with therapy. Because it is hard. You're telling a lot of things to a stranger, and they need to be willing to earn that trust first too. And so telling them, look, the therapist wants to connect with you, wants to earn your trust. They're not wanting to just, hammer you with rules and lectures. I think those are really good tips. And another thing, I've had kids who we just came in and we played games, because if they're not ready to talk, me making them talk is going to put a bad taste in their mouth for therapy. So letting them know, look, therapists are trained to help you in whatever level you're at. If you're not ready to talk about this and go into depth about this, then go in and play some games with them, do some art activities with them, because that's what we'll do. We'll pull out the paints, and they're not ready to talk, but maybe they'll paint their emotions, or they're maybe not ready to talk about emotions at all. And we'll play games, because games build skills as well. Games build impulse control skills and attention skills and social skills, all kinds. So they are getting something out of it, but it doesn't feel that threatening. So, just telling them, look, ask your therapist if you can play some games just until y'all get used to each other.
Anything else, guys? Any other questions? This is your opportunity to ask the therapist.
Ask the therapist. I'm going to start a show. Ask the therapist. Any? None? All right.
Oh, good. I have one more thing for you, Kimberly. What about maybe like different kinds of therapy? Like maybe you're not really for sure what the best kind that your teenager might need. Or you feel like where they're at right now, they're not really connecting or doing anything that's actually helping the situation. So what are some ways that they could advocate or know what to look for, maybe that it's not a good fit for them and that they need something more intensive?
So obviously there's rapport building at the beginning of any therapy relationship. So you always want to build in plenty of time for that rapport building, not just kind of say, oh, well, we've been doing this for 6 weeks and we're not connecting. Because for some kids, there's a connection right away. For some kids, it's a session or two. Some kids have honestly sat in therapy for 3 months and then the light bulb went off and bam, they're ready, great relationship. So I always say, take time. And I would give, I give this to teens because I've worked with teens that weren't happy about being in therapy. And so I'll say, look, how about we give it a try? We'll give it a try for 3 months. And if you are absolutely uncomfortable for 3 months, maybe we'll look to something else. We'll find if there's a different therapist that you can connect with, or there's a different type of therapy that you could do. Because, there's different, there's EMDR therapy. There's so many. There's some therapists out there that are what are called EMDR therapists. That's that eye movement, desensitization, reprocessing. It doesn't involve a lot of talking. So where you get a client that may not be ready to talk, you can move them into a therapy like EMDR where they're still getting trauma-focused treatment, but they don't have to verbalize it. And then you've got some that really need more play-based therapy. And so maybe they go, if it's not working, after a few months, they try out something like Bloom, behavioral health, and maybe it's more of a behavioral therapy that they need, not necessarily a cognitive therapy, but it's more behaviorally motivated. They might need more, honestly, they might need to look into, we refer sometimes to Four Rivers partial hospitalization when that once a week, because we do at Child Watch, we do once every 2 weeks, but we make exceptions and do once a week. There's some kids that need it a couple of times a week, and we just can't offer that. But Four Rivers has what's called partial hospitalization, which is where the kid is hospitalized at Four Rivers during daytime hours. They get school, but they also attend lots of hours of therapy, group therapy, individual. So maybe they need that more intensive service where they need something every day and different types. Because, we're talking, there's art therapy, there's play therapy, there's CBT, EMDR, family systems, dialectical behavioral therapy. I mean, I could go on and on. There's all those different types, but then there's different, what's the different word for it? Not modalities, but so you can do individual therapy, group therapy, family therapy. You might find that one's more successful for a kid. So maybe the kid isn't having a lot of issues, but until they interact with a caregiver and you start to realize, okay, there's something in that dynamic that's causing the breakdown. So let's invite the parent in, and it's maybe more beneficial for that parent to be in it than just the individual. So definitely give it time to fill it out. Then start looking around, talking with them about maybe if there's someone that really needs to be invited into the therapy to make it more productive and successful. Then you can start maybe looking around, okay, is there a type of therapy that would be better for them? Like that's, primarily EMDR based or cognitive behaviorally based or play based. And then severity. Do we need to ideally look for someone that can provide 2, 3 times a week therapy? So intensity there too. So, just it really needs to be tested out. But my first thing is give it time. I think we've got to give it time. We as therapists, the kids, anyone involved in the kids' lives, we have to give it time because, like I said, it's a rapport building thing and it takes time to build rapport. And so you never want to cut it off before that's had a chance. And you got to empathize with them. I mean, man, I wouldn't want to be told what to do either. If someone told me I had to go to see this person every week or every 2 weeks, I would, that rebelliousness in me would probably say, well, I'm not going to talk because no one tells me what to do, So you got to give them a chance to work through that, like they need to be able to express that and say, well, I think it's stupid that someone's telling me what I need to do. Okay, yeah, let's talk more about that. Let's empathize. Let's let you have that moment. You deserve that moment. So they got to have time to work through those things.
That's awesome. Well, I know that you all have probably really enjoyed Kimberly coming. I know I love the fact that she can show you guys, you guys have access to her. I mean, that is no other, CASA gets to say that they have therapy in their office. So it's great that we have that. And if you weren't a part of the training that Kimberly did, it is on our e-menus thing that Stephanie has sent out. And you can watch that. Kimberly has done all kinds of new training to offer all kinds of services to our kids. So make sure that if you don't personally know her, in your case, that you do try to connect with her on your kids, especially because I think that that rapport is just offers so much that no one else can have. So I really appreciate you coming and being with us today. Thank you, Kimberly.
Thanks for having me. I think I said in my CASA training, I love to talk. So gives me more opportunity just to talk. But yeah, if y'all have any questions, my email is khines@childwatchcac.org. If you come up with any questions later, or if you want to swing by, talk about your kiddo, you could even do that too. All
Thank
right.
you so much.
Bye, guys.
so
Have a good
much.
night.
I told you guys that we
Thank
were going to
you.
continuously be adding to our room today, and we've added a few more strangers while Kimberly was talking. So we have added, my panel now is all here except for whether or not Jamie can hop in later, but we'll keep her. If she gets to hop on, whoever's talking will stop and let Jamie talk because she is working right now. So if she gets a free moment between now and 8 o'clock, she's gonna hop on here real quick. But we have added Clarissa Shepherd, Suzanne Churchwell. We also have Richard's gonna be a part of the panel and Sandy. But just because they're gonna share about specific things, if you guys have something to add to that topic, I want you guys all to have something to say. Normally Liz, whenever she does panels, she gives them a list of things they can talk about. And I just felt like each one of them overlap in so many areas that I'm just going to kind of throw out something and then I want them to answer if that has happened in their case. But I do want them to first tell a little bit about maybe the current case they have or one of their cases with their teenagers, at least just some kind of success. And then, you know, was it a challenging case? And maybe what were some of the big key items that we have focused on in that case? I'm going to start with Clarissa. And I have a few things that I really want Clarissa to share about. She has had some really difficult cases. She actually had one of those where her child said, I don't need therapy. I don't want to go to therapy. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that. She's also had a pregnancy. Lorraine has had that issue as well in her cases. And
two.
so, two, yes, Clarissa is quite the all-star in that. And just, you know, what were some of the challenges that you faced with that? And I'll let you start, and then if I think of something else, I'll interrupt and ask you something else.
All right. Well, I am Clarissa. I have been a CASA for 5-6 years, something like that. I currently don't have a case, so it's easy going right now. But I just got off a case within the last several months. So fun times had by all. Most all of the cases that I have had have been teenagers. I think I've only had maybe 1 or 2 cases that haven't been teenagers. So kind of well versed in this aspect of it all. But when I went through training, that's the ones that I wanted. So it has been challenging, but it's not, they're going to be fine for the most part. And so that's kind of like the mentality that I've taken is things might blow up every other day, but they're going to be fine. We're going to be okay. We're going to be that sounding board. We're not going to deal with those big, difficult emotions with them or let them see that you're dealing with those big, difficult emotions. Just call Jen. It'll be fine. All right. What questions do you have for me? Or are we introducing everybody?
Well, I want you to tell a little bit about so when you found out like that one of your cases thought they were going to be graduating and they didn't end up having enough credits. Like, who did you talk to? How did you handle that issue? So you had this major education breakdown.
And this has happened quite a bit. So like if you have a kiddo that is in like an alternative learning environment, whether that's remote learning before COVID. So if we are in like an alternative learning environment, making sure that you're really being transparent with the guidance counselor. Because in one of my cases, she thought that she was going to be graduating at the end of the year and she had barely enough credits to be a sophomore. And she was 17 at the time. So that was very devastating and very heartbreaking for her at that time. So because you want to have empathy for your child, obviously. That stinks. That is big news that they are going to hear. She wanted to drop out as soon as she heard that news. She didn't want to work any further. And so when you go to propose that conversation, making sure that you have all of the tools in the toolbox. So making sure that you have what your options are. Hey, if we stick it out, here's when you can graduate. Hey, if you don't want to graduate, here's how we can get a GRE. Here's our other options. Here's what we can do. So just kind of having several different cards that they can play. So you're not forcing their hand at anything. Because as a kid, like Kim was saying earlier, being told what to do is not what they want to hear. So being given options is what is going to be the honey that will get them there. And of course, they're going to be super upset with the school. They're going to be super upset with this, that, or the other. And don't let me put words into their mouth either. But somebody has to have that blame, right? And so that was what was difficult in navigating that situation. So she ended up wanting to continue on with homeschooling and prove me wrong that she had all of the credits that she could graduate. And I'm like, okay. So denial was definitely a factor that we had to deal with. And you know what? We went with it and we revisited the conversation until it actually clicked. But it wasn't the hill that I was willing to die on at that time.
That's good. We may come back to you. I'm going to try to get around to all the panelists, and then we'll try to do some of the things that will probably cross over. Suzanne is with us, and I'm so glad you're here. I want you to tell a little bit about I know you've had a few real challenges. I know one of the big things is you had kids in one place and then they got moved. And so just kind of like, here you have these teenagers, how do you build a rapport with them? And then all of a sudden they're not, in arm's grasp. And then just like, who were some of your resources? How did you figure out how to track things down? Who did you use?
Well, they were actually located 40 miles from me the first time. And then they moved about 150 miles from me the second time. So they weren't in super close proximity, either move. You can get a lot of stuff done via email and telephone. I've learned it is, to me, I really like to do face-to-face visits at first, and then email and phone seems to work great after that. After someone gets to see you, you kind of have a sit-down chat. And then one of the children wanted to talk at first, then decided not to talk at all, refused to talk to me. So that was definitely one of the main challenges I had. Would not talk to me from about probably the second month into the case through the remainder of the case. So just flat out would not converse with me at all. She wouldn't be there whenever I came for home visits. She might walk in just for a brief moment, and then she would immediately walk back out and go somewhere else. So I think that was my biggest challenge at any place I've probably ever had, is because of being at a distance, I was not able to go try to build a relationship with her again. So that was the biggest obstacle for me. Even though you can definitely do these cases whenever there is a great distance between you, it's so much easier to build a relationship with the children whenever you can actually be there and be seeing them on a maybe weekly every 2 weeks basis. So yeah, the distance was hard for me in that case. I wish.
Have another case. I know you've probably had lots of cases I don't really know a lot about. So do you have another case that you think that maybe had a real something that seemed a challenge, but you were able to turn it around and really make a success out of it?
Yeah, we had, I say we because I always think of Liz, who is my supervisor, being like my team, my cheerleader,
Absolutely.
she's there for me no matter what. So definitely, I'm trying to think which one is probably the most. No, I had a crossover youth, which is a child that's in the welfare system and also in the criminal justice system. So not only were they also in the juvenile court system, but after that case was over, then they were transferred to DJJ, which is the Department of Juvenile Justice. So that was completely new territory to both Liz and I. And the distance again made it difficult because this child was now about 200 miles away from me. So it was just, I heavily relied on the people at DJJ. And I might add, if you ever have a case where you have a child at DJJ, they run, in my experience, like a well-oiled machine. To me, it's amazing how they react, or not react, but how they respond to CASAs. I've had nothing but good experiences with everybody that I've come across from DJJ. So if you do have a case where you have to deal with them, I see it as not a bad thing. And for me personally, looking in on it for the child, it was easy for me to deal with them, but for the child, I also thought it was the best place for them. The child had had a couple of previous stays at a couple of hospitals, and those places were not working well for this person. So once they were in DJJ's care, they were really able to iron out some kinks, and it was actually the best place for this juvenile. So don't let it scare you. I think it scared us at first, but it ended up being probably the best thing.
And now, am I remembering correctly? Like, was it the county attorney that ended up being the one that helped you actually get into contact with DJJ? Or wasn't there someone some outsider that was able to make it work?
I think Liz had the pull on that one. Okay. We kept being we had a little bit of an issue actually getting a hold of the caseworker, and somehow, I don't remember the exacts, but somehow, some way, once we got in, we were good to go.
That's awesome. So yeah. If you have anybody like that, we need Liz. That's what we've learned.
Yeah. Yes, but once they realized that they needed to, that we were part of it, that they needed to collaborate with us, they did so easily.
Awesome. Well, that's good news. Good news. And we will always take any bonuses that we can get, right?
Exactly.
That also leads me to Richard. Gosh, when I think about all of your cases, I think about probably the greatest challenge we had was your last case, where all of a sudden nobody knew what to do with our individual. So I want you to talk about, how did you figure this out? What could you do? And how did we end up resolving the situation?
Well, somehow or another, he got placed in what kind of facility was that anyway, Jen? I'm not really sure.
It was just like a residential treatment center, but he never really should have qualified to.
No, you're right. Well, the biggest factor of it was this particular treatment center was orientated around education, school, middle school, high school. And he had already completed all his classes in that, I can't think of what it is. I guess alternative school is what I know it as, but it's, what kids who got in trouble go to, the school they go to. He actually had a brush with juvenile detention for a little while. And that's when he got put in that, I can't think of this, that I call it alternative school, but it's actually got a name here locally. And he completed all his coursework that he needed to graduate high school. Somehow or another, he got into that treatment center, and he wasn't even qualified to be there because he'd already graduated high school. So he was stuck because COVID hit, right when they were thinking about booting him out of there. COVID hit, and they couldn't move him. So it was a big ordeal. He's the one I talked about earlier that actually aged out of the foster program, but eventually he got placed with fictive kin. But DCBS still tried to get him to recommit to the cabinet, and he just refused to. But yeah, that was fun because he kept getting in trouble there. But boy, he was a smooth talker. Every time me and Jamie went up there and talked to him, that kid had us convinced that he was doing everything he was supposed to do, exactly how he was supposed to do it. Everybody was out to get him.
Absolutely.
Yeah, usually when we got done talking with him, we immediately went and talked to his caseworker, his case manager there, and then we got the real story. So, also there, I spoke regularly with his therapist that he had there, and we finally got it all sorted out. Because he got placed, he wasn't going into foster care upon being discharged from this facility, and got placed with fictive kin. He was able to be released, and just prior to his 18th birthday. But like I said, I tried really hard to get him to recommit to the cabinet because of all the benefits and all the resources that are available to him through the cabinet. But he was just convinced, just 100% convinced that they were going to make him jump through hoops and all this other stuff. And at that point, he was done listening to adults. He just wanted to get out on his own. And in fact, he ran away from his fictive kin placement. But it was it happened right in the same week that he turned 18. So everybody just basically said, okay, you're 18, you're on your own. And all I could do was just tell him, if you need resources, please contact your social worker, because even though they're no longer on the case, they can give him the resources that are available to him just because he was in foster care. The fact that he was in foster care, he still has certain resources available. They will pay for his school. He did say he was going to go to college. Whether that happened or not, I'm not sure, because I lost touch with him because he just did not want to. I tried calling him, and he just, he never would answer my calls. So, I hate that I lost touch with him. Most of the time, with my kids, I try to keep in touch with them as long as I possibly can. But, sometimes you just lose touch. But anyways, yeah, it all worked out. I hope he ended up going to college like he said he was going to. I hope he didn't fall into his old crowd, but I did the best I could with what I had to work with. I'm really sorry. My dog's being funny. Right
Well,
now.
and you didn't have very long with him either, right? I mean, it was a pretty short window.
Yeah,
before he was going to be aging out.
Yeah, I think it was probably he was already. Stop. Hey, girls, come here. I'm sorry. Give me just a second.
Fine.
anyways, yes, he was already 17. I think he was, I think we only had him a little over 6 months. And during that time, most of it was, we were isolated from because of COVID. Jamie and I went up there probably about, I think 3 times, and then COVID hit and we weren't allowed to come up there no more.
Well, I know Sandy has some of that crossover with just what do you do when they keep getting moved, and what is your relationship with your social worker? I don't know. I know so many things about this one, but I want you to tell me a little bit about maybe the fact that we've had her for so long. Like, this hasn't been an easy, quick 6-month we're done case, right?
No, we started out at 14, and she has been probably in every facility in Kentucky and even in juvenile center for a while. But I know she, I forgot her name, that just had a case with them. We were told by the social worker that she could not have visitors or anything. So while she was here in the juvenile delinquent, we did not get to see her or talk to her. But she has moved and gone steadily downhill, I think, every time. She has been in maybe one foster care, is that right? But she was only there 3 or 4 days. Every place she's been, she breaks out of and runs away. They get her back. She was in Louisville for quite a while. I did go visit her there. But she broke out of that place also and was gone 2 or 3 days. And now she was moved the other side of Lexington, about 5 or 6 hours away. So I really have not got to visit with her. And when I did, when she was here and I got to visit, we'd always have a good conversation and everything, but she never, I don't know, she has just caused trouble every place she's been and got kicked out, I guess, or moved. And we have had not much cooperation from the social worker. I mean, they'll move her, not even tell us about it. Jen always comes to the rescue and finds her, though. So I don't know. It's really been a sad case. And she's going to be 18 in May. So right now she says she's going to recommit and go to college, and she is very smart. She graduated early from high school, and that was kind of a problem. Then they didn't know what to do with her. She couldn't go to college yet. So I don't know. I don't know what'll happen with her.
When I think about resources, like people that we've met along the way, I feel like Sandy has met just about everybody. We've had to deal with caseworkers in a residential treatment center that ended up being your best friend, right? That kept us informed on everything.
The one place was really good to call and send reports and all of that, but they've not all been that forthcoming. So, but
you've met every family member that this child has. Any possible placement that there could have been, she's had to go and meet with them. You've also had just the residential treatment centers. Then we now have a Wendy's Wonderful Kids worker.
She has really been good.
So I feel like constantly we're adding new players to our list. But trying to really reach her and make a real difference has definitely been a challenge.
It has, because
I
you
think
don't
that's
always.
one thing. No, go ahead.
You don't I'll call and leave messages for her to call or for the therapist to call, and I don't always get a call back. So you know, it's very hard getting information here lately.
So that's kind of one thing I want to ask all of you guys on the panel. You know, what are some ways that you advocate? Because we do continue to advocate, even if we don't have a relationship with the child, or that we have a child that's making, you know, necessarily real progress. Like, how do you still dig down deep inside and keep fighting? Like, what is it that drives you? Who wants to go first? Clarissa, we can turn back to you.
I can
Do
go
what?
first. That's fine.
All right, well, tell me.
She's frozen.
Are you talking to me?
Yes.
Okay.
Can you hear us?
So, can you hear me?
Yes, now.
Okay, cool. My thing is just as stubborn
Oh, I think we're losing you, Clarissa.
as
We're gonna
all of
let
the
me come
teenagers
back.
that I've come head to head with, and there is okay.
Are you there? All right, Richard, how about you tell me? What is something that you
Oh, well, it just depends on the older children. I always try to help them whether they ask for it or not, because there's sometimes, especially like their schooling. I had those two boys that were, one was a teenager, one was almost a teenager, and they were really struggling in school. But previously, they had not been in school for, I think, up to 2 years. So they were really struggling because they had a lot of catching up to do. And I had to get involved with the guidance counselors. I went through some of the IC, what are those called?
IEPs?
IEPs. Yeah, I went to several of those because because they were struggling so much and they were so far behind, we had them like every 3 months there for like the first year. And we finally got them almost caught up. They were still struggling, but they worked hard. I was in touch with the guidance counselors, with their tutors, with the teachers, with the vice principal and the principal, and the foster parents, and we worked really, really hard to get them, caught up. And also, I was also in touch with their therapist also because of all this struggle they were having in schools. It was affecting them. They were lashing out behaviorally because of that. So, that's something that they didn't care nothing about, but I knew was very, very important, was their education. So that's what I did as an advocate, is just kept pointing people in the directions they need to go in to make sure that these boys were took care of.
All right, Suzanne, how did you advocate for them? You're muted.
How did I advocate for them? What was the full question? Wasn't
Like, even when you didn't have any active participant that wanted you advocating for them, but you did it anyway. So like, what were some ways you still advocated for them when maybe it wasn't the easiest relationship for you?
Yeah, the school, for sure. 100%. I think the most important thing probably on any CASA case I've had is to have a relationship with the school. Whether that be teachers, guidance counselor, family resource coordinator, principal, assistant principal, a coach. Usually it's the guidance counselors that I have found to be the ones that really have the time to help a lot. For one case, it was a guidance counselor who, or wasn't a guidance counselor, I'm sorry, it was more like a family resource coordinator, who was noticing some things about this child on a continuous basis. And because of my communication with her and my communication with the social worker, we kept pressing and pressing and pressing the social worker with all these things that were being noticed at school, and ended up getting the child moved. So the social worker wasn't communicating with the school, but because I was, and then I was then relaying that information to the social worker, it helped get the child out of a situation that wasn't terrible, but it also wasn't the best. So yeah, school, definitely.
Now, your child that was in DJJ, have you closed that case now?
Yes, not so long.
It ended up having a happy ending, right?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
So what happened?
The child is living, well, I say it has a happy ending. I don't think the biological parent would say that it has a happy ending, but the child's been placed with a grandparent, and mom has visitation rights, and that's it.
I mean, hey, he's not on the street somewhere. He has a stable home and loving people around him. I think that's a win.
Yes, definitely a win.
That is definitely. Well, good. Sandy, how about you? How do you advocate when we maybe not even know where she's at? How do you write a court report? What do you write in there?
It's been very difficult. So, and we haven't had the opportunity like for schools or anything like that. She's always been in a facility. So we just talk to them if we can. And, 2 or 3 of them have been real good to respond. And we just ask how they're doing, what we can do, where they're going. And we just haven't really had a lot of support outside of the facilities. So I don't know why. This is my first experience with a social worker who did not share. So I don't really know how to handle this.
In her previous cases, she was best friends with her social worker. So it was really a culture shock for this case. I think.
That was a good definition for culture. So it has been really hard to adapt to it. We're just trying to help.
So many times Sandy wrote in there, I don't think she's getting the therapy she needs. I don't think her meds are regulated. I think we jumped up and down nonstop about things like that no one else mentioned. You went and met with an extended family member that the cabinet said I would never place with, but that was our last hope, to think that she could be in a family, surrounded by her family. I mean, it didn't work out, but it was a nonstop, every tree that could be, scratched, we've tried. I think there have been times where Sandy might have wanted to just walk away. I will never give her that option. But she just keeps trying. And, one thing that was a win with her is we send Christmas gifts wherever she is to her child. And Liz actually took it for us. And Liz called us and said that whenever the child opened her gift, the first thing she said was, she remembered my favorite color was purple. And I don't think that anyone had ever done anything for her that she felt like they thought about her. And, I don't know what's going to happen when this child turns 18. But I feel like never was there a moment that Sandy has not been trying and fighting for the best situation that this child can have. And we just keep doing it. just keep on chugging on. But the judge every time says this is the saddest case she's ever gonna have. So I tell her, hey, we get past this one, it can't be any worse.
Oh, I saved the best one for last.
Don't
It
you tell
has-
me
it's
that.
it's been very sad. It has.
I did
really
let her
been
get
sad.
2 little girls though that got adopted. So I tried to help her out in the middle of this case.
That helped. That
I knew
helped.
she was struggling and I really didn't want to lose one of my favorite classes. And so I said, we've got to find her some cute little girls that will, boost her ego a little and let her love on them to get us through. And I think that, that's what a supervisor does. We notice when our classes are struggling and how can we help them? How can we be there to support you guys in any way that we can? So I never want you guys to ever think you're alone. I love that Suzanne said, we, talking about her and Liz, because you're never alone, even when you might feel like you're all out there on your own. We're always behind you, cheering you on and trying to come up with more resources for you all. Trying to think. So we talked about school. So Clarissa, you said you had some pregnant teens. So what were some of the resources we used for that?
So what was unique about that situation is the first pregnant teen that I had, I was working with pregnant women with substance use disorders at the time at Four Rivers Behavioral Health. And so the first one I had, she had actually been in one of my previous classes. And so that was a unique experience. But working with the Hope Clinics, working with Hope Unlimited, and just getting familiar with the services that are provided there is paramount in making sure that we can help support and rewrite the narrative, because obviously if they're in a family court case, they haven't necessarily been provided with the best resources or tools in their toolbox to know how to appropriately parent. And so just building those tools and building those educational experiences as they want to, and as they allow you to help them, because again, they will not do anything that you absolutely tell them to, or if they do it, they're not going to like it, or they're not going to soak in the information. And a lot of the times, if you empower them as the parent and as the adult in the situation, they're a lot more comprehensive about wanting to accept the help and support versus treating them as a kid who's having a kid.
Lorraine, I know that you're not on my panel, but I know that you also dealt with that situation. Was there any resources that really helped you navigate that situation? You're muted.
When I took the case, the child was already pregnant. But her background was, when I said before, she took care of the family. And one of the ways she took care of the family, her parents sold her, and for sex, and that's how she brought in money. Most of that money was used for their drug habits. And I think this was probably about her third pregnancy, but the first two, she had lost a child. And, but surprisingly, she accepted the pregnancy very well and was very involved in it. I mean, really every moment of it. She took her parent classes, did very well. And it was like, it was like it was going to be her child. But the minute the child was born, she really didn't want it. It was like, she just woke up and just, I don't want this child anymore. So she decided she'd let the foster parents take the child. you know, she did all the right things she was supposed to do during that time. But I think in her mind, I got the impression, the only thing that she had never told anybody, but the only thing I took it to be was she had been with so many people, and she was only like, I don't know, at that time, she was probably 15 years old when she had, 15 years old when she had this child, or 16 at the most. And, but I was think she thought it was one of her own boyfriend's child. And I think when she found out it wasn't, she just lost interest in it completely. So when she has left now, and she has left the child, and the child is going to be adopted by the foster parents. But, she don't really ask about it, or, I mean, it was just like day and night, when she saw that child, she just didn't, it just wasn't something she wanted anymore. So she has really had a rough time. I mean, from the day she is born, she's had a rough time. And I just hope for the best. I've always hoped for the best, but she thinks she knows, because she has always been a strong person. She thinks she knows everything that's best for her. And she really doesn't want anybody's opinion or anything like that. She's very nice. I mean, she will listen to you and she will talk to you. We've always had a good relationship, but I know more than, this is me and I know what I need to do. So I don't know what else you can do about that. So.
Well, it just makes me think about what Jill told us about the adolescent brain. And, we're talking about babies at 18.
Oh yeah. Babies having babies. Yeah.
And, their brains aren't developed. And so I find it really hard sometimes when we expect them to make the right decisions and to handle things like we would, when, with their trauma. I feel like their brain is even less developed than it would be as a normal 16 or 17-year-old.
Yeah.
So can I ask anybody else, is there anything you guys want to know? Or, I know it kind of sounds like doom and gloom, but what I want you guys to understand is that even though there are real challenges, we don't get the easy cases. We talk about that all the time, that everyone wants an easy case. And I said, well, you don't get to be a CASA if you want an easy case. We're gonna have okay, except for Debbie.
I did. I did.
But and we talk about Debbie's being an easy case, but her mother is the mother in her child's case is the sister to Sandy's. Okay. And so it was really tough to know that backstory along with that, and to know that that mom had multiple times where she really had made some great decisions and really pulled herself together, and then got to the point where she said, I think the best thing I can do is walk away. And so, it is tough. But I hope that maybe we talked about people you wouldn't even thought about bringing in as a resource. Clarissa talked about the Four Rivers having a pregnancy class. Some resources you don't even necessarily normally think of. I always talk about schools. I think the guidance counselor, like Suzanne said, is always your best friend. But you're going to be bringing people in like Wendy's Wonderful Kids Worker. In Richard's case, he knew the person that, was going to take them when they turned 18. So he was reaching out beyond the scope of what our typical CASA would be. But ultimately, I want you guys to be thinking about, the reason why this program is here is to create some skills in these kids before they're 17 and 18. I hope that you guys definitely see why it's super important that we intervene as soon as we can to hopefully cut off some of those things, especially like in Clarissa's situation about school. You know, if we could have intervened when that child was, 14 or 15, we wouldn't be 17 and a half and thinking we're going to be a senior when we're actually only a sophomore. And so I don't think you can ever advocate enough for your child's schooling. But then we run into things like Sandy and Richard, where they were put in treatment centers where what did you do all day? You do school. And so you're 16 years old and graduate high school. And you have to be in a treatment center for the next 2 years. And what are they going to do with you? Who else can you call? We've had multiple team meetings with DCBS where they said we don't have places for those kids. So, hopefully in part 3, we're going to be talking with the criminal justice system and truancy and residential treatment centers. And hopefully we're going to have a chance to, to actually say some of these issues we've ran into. How do you cross over to DJJ and get someone like Suzanne did that, was able to give them great information and keep her informed versus, of course, COVID's a different giant. But Sandy, when her kid was at McCracken, we were so excited thinking she's finally here. And, they locked it down and wouldn't let even a phone call go in. So, just who do you call? Maybe the caseworker is your best friend. Which, here we had the local DCBS office for Sandy's case. That was really hard to find out information. But then there was a caseworker at the residential treatment center that was able to give her weekly updates. So, I feel like we just have to think about, you're constantly thinking outside the box, trying to find the back door to get the information that you need. Jill, I kind of feel like you're maybe looking at this as the most outsider. What are some things that maybe you see that stand out to you about dealing with challenges? And
You're correct. I am seeing this from an outsider because I don't have a lot of ACOSTA experience. I did go through the guided learning program with Jen, but I've never had a case. But it was good for me to go through that to kind of see, especially in this training situations, what you guys actually face in the process of handling a case. They're very fascinating stories. I love, how you kind of navigate each of those cases where I don't know if I could have that, have those thoughts and tools to do that even after having those classes. So, props to all of you guys, definitely. I was interested in the kids the pregnant teens, because that seems to be something that, is kind of off the radar. After who was it that had the baby that gave it to Miss Lorraine, I think, gave the baby away. Is she still in the program? Did they remain in the program until they age out?
Yes, he's still in the program until he'll be adopted. And then the pregnant girl also has a brother and sister, which they are younger. And I have a lot more hope for them. So, and I really, the reason I'm taking this class is mainly because one of them is turning 15 and she is very different from her sister. So I'm hoping she will take a different path completely.
And there's definitely always hope that will happen.
Yeah.
Most definitely. I am one of 5, and you can line us all up and we look very similar, and you can say, okay, they come from the same family just from looks, but to sit down and talk to us, you would not, if you were blindfolded, you would not put us 5 together. So, when you do have multiples, they probably are going to have different outcomes.
Yeah.
Richard, it makes me think about Jamie's case. And I don't know, you know a lot about, I can't remember if you were, I think that one was just her, but I know you were there right along with it. When she had the mom that had been in foster care and had the baby. And Jamie only had her for what, oh my gosh, not very long. Do you remember much about it?
I remember bits and pieces of. I do remember that she was in foster care. She got pregnant while she was in foster care. The foster mom, at first she didn't want the baby, and the foster mom was going to go ahead and take custody of the baby. And then she decided, oh, never mind. I want to go ahead and keep my baby. And then she signed up. She went ahead and recommitted to the cabinet and started going to school. And then she met someone, got married, lost most of her benefits from being in, recommitting to the cabinet because she got married. Oh, it was a mess. It was a mess, but I think she stayed in school, and Jamie's still in contact with her because
But
she'll
what I
call
loved
over here,
about that
she'll call
one
Jamie.
is we normally wouldn't follow kids after they already recommitted, but we did because we had this baby. And so we were able to track mom's kind of progress, how it was going. And who knew that an independent living, I mean, I know they have rules, but we didn't know that you get married, you forfeit them all.
Yep.
And here she was, Jamie finds out she's married, that she's losing her housing, and it was crazy. But, I think last Jamie told me mom was doing great with the little one, and she ended up marrying the guy, and they're still together. And while, it seemed like a bunch of bad decisions all at one time, it really did seem to work out in this situation.
But she still was able to keep going to school, and the government is continuing to pay that, the state. So that's good. What they call them, vouchers?
Yes.
Okay. She was
So that
able to
was
keep the
good.
vouchers even though they did get married. So
Yeah.
that was good.
So in Lorraine's
But,
case,
yeah,
the
Jamie stayed
mom
involved with
gave-
that.
Yeah, that's awesome. I was just thinking, so in Lorraine's case, the mom gave the baby, signed her rights away. The foster mom got the baby. In Jamie's, mom kept the baby and still has the baby. Clarissa's case, mom had the baby and had a second baby.
Oh,
there
an
anything-
update on that. Mom currently doesn't have either of the babies because she gave them to the fictive kin, who now has them while she's with baby daddy.
All righty then.
Ta-da!
And baby daddy was a 30-year-old with a 15-year-old. Went to jail.
Which is why she got into foster care in the first place. She was also a twin, and her twin was not in foster care at all. Fun times had by all.
So, Savannah, have we completely scared you off?
No, I'm not scared. I actually feel a little bit better just because I know that there are other people that I can reach out to if I
Absolutely.
have questions or anything like that. In my case, I have 3 teenagers, so it's a little intimidating, but
Savannah,
we'll see. Yes, ma'am.
my best advice to you is is Jen your supervisor?
Yes.
Okay. When things get tough, threaten to quit, and she'll treat you nice until you decide that you're not going to quit anymore.
Okay. Got it. Noted.
Oh my gosh. And that makes me think that Sandy's like, I've tried that. Jen won't let me go yet.
Sounds
Maybe
good.
Maybe we should have a panel of tips and tricks for Jen to all your classes can make some tips and tricks.
Oh my goodness.
I could
Well,
write a book.
When we talked about cultural competency and how that is such a misleading term, how you will never be culturally competent, I don't feel like you're ever prepared to handle the cases that you're given. But your ability to think on your feet and reach out to resources that you didn't even know existed, to track them down, to find how to get there. Every case, I learned something new. We find a new person that we have never talked to before. I'm so excited about part 2. We found out that there is a program in Murray that actually offers tutoring services to kids in 6th grade. Is that correct, Jill? Do you remember?
Yes, I believe it is 6th grade. Yes.
In like almost all of our schools, like our schools qualify. So we are going to be able to now intervene with our kids that are in 6th grade all the way up through high school. And actually have a tutor from Murray come for free. I mean, like there are all kinds of resources that we're constantly finding that we didn't even know existed. So I feel like, you know, there's always going to be challenges. There's always going to be something new, but knowing you're never alone. Savannah, you have got right here the greatest group of people that would be willing to help you in any way they can. Their expertise, and even though they're sitting here telling you all their crazy stories, they have not given up. They have never turned their back. They've never stopped in the middle of the case and said, I'm done. They've persevered unlike anyone else. And I just think, you know, that's why you guys are who you are. I always call you the all-stars. You are the all-stars. And I'm just lucky because I get to be a part of your team, even though I'm not the one there. And I just feel like I'm the luckiest person to get to have you all. And I haven't gotten to have Suzanne as mine, or Lorraine, but you know, we all work together. We, you know, Liz and Stephanie, we all sit around and talk about our cases and how can we help each other. When we get to a stopping point, you know, we're like, what do we do? I think about Cher's case even, you know, Cher's case has the mom that had been in foster care. And, you know, what were some resources that maybe would have benefited her that could have made it where we're not here with her children now?
Right. Say that again, say it one more time.
I said, I was just saying, you know, like how, you know, your mom in your case was in foster care, and, you know, like what resources maybe could we have used back then that might have helped steer her in a totally different path? Gosh,
I mean, anything like, I mean, Hope Unlimited, any of the places, I guess, that you're using now. I wasn't, I wasn't there back then, but I mean, I know, you know, the same foster parents that had her kids had her, you know, at that time. They're not the foster parents anymore, but they had her. And so, and she had good ones, you know, it wasn't their fault. She had good ones, but you know, it's just like the lady that was talking, we've gone through so much information. So if I forget names about the brain activity, you know.
That was Jill. Yeah.
Yes, Jill. And I listened very, very good with that, because if I do start, you know, with my next ones have teenagers, you know, that's a lot to understand, you know. I mean, and where she's coming from. I've tried to understand her, the mother, the biological mother. Not only, you know, my responsibility is for the kids as a CASA, but I feel like I have to be there for her also too, you know, in some point, because that is their mother, you know, and I don't want her to not succeed. You know, I want I'm there for the kids, but I've tried to understand her and where she's come from the beginning, from the time that I've taken over the case, in other words. So I probably got off there a little bit, but you know, from where she could get resources. But I mean, I've tried to be there as an advocate kind of for her a little bit too, just because they need that too. You know, they need these resources. They need these places because they have no idea. If they've had no parenting and they've had nobody in their lives, they have no idea. It's just sad. It's sad.
Well, and I think about in your case and in Richard, Aaron, Jamie's case, you know, the foster parents were a huge resource to these people.
Yes.
And even though they might not have had the, you know, desired outcome, their influence and their help in steering these children, you know, is invaluable. I mean, you cannot disregard that.
No.
Any questions for anybody on the panel? Like, do you guys have any, or anyone else? I mean, just anything that you guys are curious or want to know?
Do you have, I have a question. Do you have, if we wanted to email Jill or any of the speakers that have like if we have questions for someone besides our supervisors, or do we go through the supervisors if we wanted to have, like, ask a question to them, like if we have a teenager in our future, as far as I go, Is it okay?
Yeah,
to-
if you know exactly who you want to ask, you're more than
Uh-huh.
welcome to ask them on here for their email. And then if not, and you think about it later and you're like, I don't remember who that was, your
Okay.
supervisor will be happy to
Okay.
connect you
Okay.
at any
Thank
time.
you.
I
Thank
use
you.
that a lot. I think I'll say, oh, I have a case that has that going on. So let me call her and ask her. And Jill put her email in the chat for
Oh,
you
okay.
as well.
Okay. Thank
Jill
you.
is going to be a part of part 1, 2, and 3. So I hope you guys enjoyed getting to know her. Part 3 is going to be a lot of Jill. But part 2, I'm really excited about doing some education advocacy. I feel like that is such a huge component of what we do. And when we were planning it out, we had forgotten about therapy. And I said, that is our number one thing that we start every, recommendation with. And so I said, well, we need to bring therapy in now in part 1. And then we're going to hit school in part 2 and 3, how to navigate some of these systems. So we might have Suzanne come back and tell us who she used at DJJ. And because, that's what we are. We're all one big team and we all have information and we all learn new things. And so I hope that you just continue to reach out to each other over anything. The only other thing that we really missed that I didn't really get to go over with you was the tool, the actual tool that we use. So I'm going to show you guys that real fast. And I say that I may have to pull up 2 different screens to get there since I got logged off earlier. I don't know if I can pull it right back up. Let me try. See what I can. Oh, Jill, I think you're still sharing and that's why it's not going to let me.
Oh, I just popped it up because I didn't think you were able to share. I was
Yeah,
trying to help you out.
Well, I was just going to pull the actual needs assessment up, and I don't think you have the actual form on
I
there.
do not. I will stop sharing so you can share your information.
Fine. I'm going to send you guys this in an email so you guys can look at it later, because I do really want you all to take a little bit of time and be able to use it. Maybe it's going to let me share. It's looking at me like I'm crazy. Okay, there we go. So what I love about this form, and I know that we're already really running out of time, but I definitely did not want to get away without at least bringing this up for you guys to look at. It is broken into several different sections. So there's an education section. And originally, whenever we first did this fostering teachers, we were like, we want you guys to fill it out and we want you to let your kids fill it out with your kids. But I think, it's a little overwhelming. I'm going to show you. It's like, I think it's 4 or 5 pages worth of questions. And as we're talking about connecting with teenagers, you can imagine that sitting there filling all this out is probably not going to be the highlight of their time. So I really encourage you just to focus on, a section at a time, or maybe if you already know that there are some struggles that your kid has. But, as far as education, do you have a plan after high school? What are you going to be? That's a super easy question, but it can lead to a lot of other things. Have you met with a guidance counselor? Have you talked about scholarships? Have you went and shadowed that career to know, do you know somebody? Have you talked to somebody that has done that? So there's so many ways that can become an entire time just by asking the simple question of what do you want to do when you get done with school? Also, hey, what are your grades like? What's your favorite subject? What subject do you hate the most? Then you can find out, is there an after school program that offers tutoring? Is there, it's a great way to find out that maybe they love art. And so you want to find a connection to an art club so that they can, pursue art. We have West Kentucky School of Art here, and, you can go and make jewelry. There's all kinds of really great things that we have right here. I feel like Jill and I have learned so much that Murray offers that we had no idea just by a couple of afternoon talks. So, show them how you find that. how do you make connections there? Employment. I know that those of you that have teenagers, I talk a lot in our training about the fact that a few years ago, if you were 16, you could not get a driver's license if you were in foster care. Now you can. That kind of puts a huge obstacle up to getting a job. Can you imagine turning 18 and about to age out and you don't have a driver's license? What would that look like? Do you guys think that might be a problem?
Yes.
Have you ever filled out a job application? My husband does this for a living with his special needs people. And, it's so funny, like now, how many places don't even have paper applications anymore? They're all online. So if you didn't have the internet, that could be a huge problem. What about volunteering? What are your interests? What are some places have you ever thought about helping anyone else? Telephone numbers, email addresses. Have you ever made an appointment? This is something I always thought was really interesting, but a lot of kids that are in foster care have never even made a doctor's appointment before because the social worker makes those or their foster parent makes those. So even just practicing, who would you call? Excuse me. Where do you find those numbers? If you started running a fever, who would you call? Do you go to urgent care? When to use the emergency room? When to use the urgent care? When to use just a regular doctor's office? What are some specialty doctors, offices that they might need to know about? Just things that we take for granted that we just know, that our parents taught us, right? I think a lot about, things that I would want my kid to know. And so many of our kids that age out or in high school have never even had these conversations, have never had anyone talk to them about it. Housing. Are you going to college? You going to stay in the dorm? Are you going to get an apartment? How are you going to pay for your apartment? Have you ever made a budget before? If you've never had a job, you've probably never had a budget. Those are some really, very big, scary things if you didn't have anybody hold your hand. So you guys see why this could be like, really important to do with your kiddos, and never too early to start. What do you guys think? Do you like this format?
I'll give you my plug on assessments, Jen.
Okay, you go ahead.
I'm big on assessments because I don't think you can go forward if you don't know where you've been. So I think you have to have some kind of point of reference, what's been going on and what's actually happening, because all successful treatment plans begin with a good assessment. So if you have a good handle on, what's actually going on, that's when you can move forward successfully with goal setting and planning. And it becomes relevant, it becomes meaningful. And those are some words that we reuse, but they're very accurate and they're very beneficial, because that's how we put our kids on the path to success, is implementing those kind of words. So I'm big on assessment. This is a really good one, just from what I've read through, and it's easy. And like Jen said, if you just take it in small bites, they won't be so overwhelmed. There's my plug on assessments.
Especially like life skills, I think this is definitely somewhere you could start with maybe even your 12-year-olds. It talks about, I just love how it asks like all gamuts, you start with healthy decisions and understanding the importance of good hygiene, staying healthy, caring for minor illnesses, nutrition, and then all the way to bank services, right? So, it is literally everything. I kind of feel like whenever we have teenagers, the amount of like knowledge areas that you shouldn't have knowledge about is just insurmountable, right? I think about another case that Jamie and Richard had. We went round and round with the foster mom about a cell phone. Okay. And who you can call with a cell phone and who you can talk to and what can you post and what can you not post. And we have lots of conversations about what is appropriate usage. I think, especially now with COVID and everybody has, had so many online classes and, we're constantly on the internet. How do you healthily, how do you put parameters? How do you guard against certain things? So those are all important things to talk about. And supportive relationships and community resources. I didn't get to talk a lot about this earlier, but that was kind of when we stopped when I was talking about mentoring and advocacy. But I think whenever that we get to this point, we kind of cross over between the advocate and being a mentor. But your number one job, I feel like, is to connect your child with a lifelong connection. So if it's not going to be with you, who is someone you can help that individual realize they have a relationship with? Like where do they go on holidays? Do they go to their best friend's mom's house? Then you want to foster that relationship and help them to understand how important that is. Some of our kids, like, they go back to their foster parents for Christmas. They still feel like that's part of their family. I feel like those are super important. How do you have a healthy connection? This has how to contact community legal resources, attorneys, caseworkers, mentors. Some of them may not even know who their DAO was that has been with them for all this time. Or hopefully their caseworker they do know. But when they turn 18, they'll get a new caseworker. So they have to be prepared. They're going to have somebody new in their life if they did choose to recommit. Civic responsibility. I just love the fact that we talk about ethnicity, cultural identity. So it really, I think this just kind of breaks it all down in such a nutshell. When you don't feel like you're like, I don't know what to talk about. This gives you all these options you can look at and get a topic to talk about and connect with them, because I feel like there are just getting them talking about themselves definitely helps build your relationship with them. I love that was one of the big things that Kimberly talked about, was building that connection, relationship. That's what it's all about. So does anyone, I feel like we covered so much today. But do you guys have any questions? Is there anything that you're hoping that we're going to cover in part 2 and 3 that we didn't talk about today? I hope you guys learned some new things and that maybe you're going to be able to feel a little more excited about your case, or maybe some new people to contact that you haven't ever contacted before. Anything you guys want to say? No? Everybody quiet?
I look forward to the next ones.
Awesome. I'm excited about part 2 and 3 because I feel like I'm going to learn so much that I don't already know. And I don't think you can ever arrive. I don't think anyone ever knows everything. And so there's always something for us to learn.
Agreed.
This is the only class or lesson that we've just talked about teenagers. And so I think it's very helpful.
I am so glad you guys are with us. Part 2 is going to be in April and part 3 is going to be in September. They're kind of far spaced apart, but there is actually a rhyme or reason to that. Part 2 is about school. And so we want to make sure that we do it while they're still in school. So we're going to do that one in April so we can have all the school players here with us. And then the one in September is because Jill is actually implementing a new program right now, and it's going to be complete, like her first round is going to be completed by then. So we're going to be able to have them come in and tell us how that program is working with truancy and a mentorship program, which if she wants to tell more about that, she can. I don't know a whole lot, so I don't want to butcher it terribly.
We're actually in the beginning planning stages, so I really don't have a whole lot of information about it, but by September, I will be able to lay it all out, and I'm hoping it's going to be a very exciting program. Most definitely. Before we hop off, I just want to tell you guys thank you for allowing me to be part of your program. I enjoyed your stories and the level of participation and all the things that you guys shared. I appreciate that.
We are all very glad that Jill hopped on here with us and is going to be my team player for the next two parts. I always love bringing somebody in that you guys might not get to see or know as well. But I'm so glad you guys came. Thank you to my panelists that joined on with your amazing expertise. And I mean it from the bottom of my heart. You guys are the all-stars. Actually, all of you are. To be a CASA, you just are cut from a different cloth than anyone else. And I'm the luckiest person to get to know you all and get to work in an area together. And I love it. I'm so thankful you guys are here today. I hope you guys learned a lot, and we will see you for part 2, hopefully. And if you have any questions at all, don't hesitate to send me an email or Jill. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Have a good night.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Bye.
And bye, everybody.
you.
Bye.
Bye.
That's everyone. Bye.
Jen, you want to stay on?
I am.
So at what point can you call me?
I'll call you when I get off here.
Okay, fine, bye.
Give her 2 seconds.
Bye. Oh my goodness. Okay. Whew.
That's fine. Oh my gosh, that is super fuzzy. I'm glad I just kept the camera off. I'm just going to turn it off because I don't want to get cut off. I thought
I'm
that
just
was
glad I
super
only got-
successful.
Oh, I'm so glad I only got cut off that one time.
Yeah, I got a little panicky because I'm like, okay, she was right in the middle of her presentation.
It was fun. It was fun.
That's why I said, okay, guys, we're going to jump to my part.
No, I mean, that's perfect. I mean, you couldn't have done any better. I'm glad you didn't hang out. And I just, normally that would be a part that I would like totally freak out. And I was like, okay, I'm going to just keep trying. I will eventually get on there and Jill's going to be fine. And I knew Kimberly had already hopped on. So I was like, well, even if Jill's like